NFL Inside Blitz Divisional Round Edition. I am joined here we're with Ron from Ron A Sports and Ted Sobel from Ted Sobel Sports. He's the guy touching greatness. How you doing, buddy?
Good. Great to have you guys back again, and loving the weekends so far. You know, there's nothing like playoff football. Maybe there's a reason you want to be going into the postseason playing your best football. Tell that to Pittsburgh, Minnie, Green Bay. They are gone. There is something about playing well going into the real season. And you mentioned it 2 weeks ago, Chris. Sam Darnold lost $1 gazillion, you said 2 weeks ago. And I said, well, let's see what happens the following week. Well, he lost $2 gazillion. What can I say?
I think that cost him between 20 and 25 million a year.
Yeah, that's probably about right. That's probably about right. He had a lot worse weekend than anybody you know who didn't have a good weekend. So let's put it that way.
Well, one thing that happened is he might have lost his ability to stay in Minnesota, because before those games, he was going to start the season. I mean, we still don't know enough about high draft pick McCarthy, because he didn't play a lot of games and he comes off an injury. So Darnold would have been the week 1 starter, and now we don't know.
Exactly. What we do know is that my play of the week last week did win easily. I'm wondering who cashed in on Ladd McConkey over 5.5 catches. I think he had that in the first quarter. So I'm joking, but whatever. Anyway.
You've been pretty good on those, Theodore.
Yeah, I was overdue, baby. What can I tell you? 6 coaching vacancies. We won't go over them right now, of course, but is there any one team, I'm curious, that you guys are saying, I want to coach that team?
I don't see why Ben Johnson would leave for any of the available positions,
including Chicago. You're saying, huh?
Why would he want to go to Chicago? I mean, Chicago's the best job yet, and I wouldn't want to go to Chicago and for my first employment as a head coach. I mean, the ownership sucks.
Might be selling though.
You're playing in a division where the 3 other teams are pretty damn solid.
Yep.
You're coming from behind right out of the gate. You're making things tough on yourself. I mean, there's going to be a better situation at some point.
You mean like Dallas, where you have to deal with Jerry?
Ugh.
I would say Jacksonville's the best job if the new coach gets the GM fired and brings in his own, because that division isn't perfect. There's room to move up. If you get somebody to help groom Lawrence, you fix the situation with the offensive line, you draft better. There's really positive stuff in Jacksonville, but not with that GM.
Yeah. You still got hopes for your quarterback in Jacksonville, that he can be a lot better than he has shown on and off. Inconsistency. He's that lousy coaching staffs, no doubt about it. Too much. Last thing before we go to the games, rest or rust? The old question going into this one, right? And the first game is the perfect example with the Chiefs. How's it going to affect them? It's not just the normal rest. It's an extra week rest for them, right? So, Detroit is Detroit. So they needed the rest, I think, just to get somebody healthy.
Well, I think we saw what happened with the NCAA playoffs. Everybody that got rest folded like a paper napkin. So it has to be a little bit of concern. You remember, teams like Tennessee and Minnesota, get the number 1 seed and then they play their first game and they can't win. So I think you have to be acutely aware of coming out to play right away.
Yeah.
Yeah. My opinion would differ, although normally I would agree with that. In these 2 particular cases, Kansas City, they needed to get their new wide receivers acclimated, and now they do. Kelsey could always use a week off in order to recharge the batteries, much the same way like Gronkowski used to be used in the playoffs, where he just came alive. for the big games. So no concerns in KC. And Detroit had a lot of cluster injuries. And if they didn't have the bye, they wouldn't have Montgomery for this game. And he's so huge. So in a way, I think it is a benefit for these two teams.
And Montgomery is one of our guests in this show, which is always nice to have you set that up beautifully there, Ron.
Thank you.
All right. So it's 22 degrees, 14-mile-an-hour winds, and another beautiful day in Kansas City for the Houston Texans, a dome team to go in there. Just curious on that side, how you think that might affect things.
You go first, Cris.
I worry quite a bit about it for Houston. I mentioned it yesterday on the show. I tried to I had a bad Monday night, and I kind of just wanted to tune things out. And when every time I picked up football content, it was somebody else saying, Houston has zero chance. The game is going to be over by halftime. Andy Reid off a bye. Kansas City healthy. On and on and on. And it's just like, wait a minute. Every time we hear stuff like narratives like this, it just doesn't work out that way. So, I kind of agree with the narratives and that everything seems to be going Kansas City's way or Kansas City's advantage, frankly. So it's hard not to be, in Kansas City's side as far as who's going to walk out of that game.
Yeah, Kansas City won their Week 6 matchup 27-19. That's about as big. If you want to call that a blowout, that's a blowout for Kansas City this year, right? So I keep hearing this, Houston could be blown out. Kansas City can't blow anybody out. So maybe this will be different.
I think both teams are better than where they were at various parts in the season. So from that standpoint, that's fine. I didn't take weather into the equation at all.
Okay.
I don't think it's that drastic and that Houston has to deal with it. And my analysis for the purposes of this show is not to repeat what Cris and I did on Tuesday, because people could go back and listen to that. They don't have to listen to me say the same things
even though they prefer this show, but go ahead.
Yeah. So I try to be a little bit different in terms of how to deal with it. So I want to focus on running back. Pacheco, who I always say runs angry, who hasn't played a lot this year, but was a force at less than 100% in the playoffs last year. And I think that's a weapon that's maybe not talked about as much, even from me, who talks about KC's wide receiver room, that he is a weapon against a Houston run defense that's a little bit vulnerable.
Okay. I want to stress the Houston pass D. Okay. They, this year, have done some unbelievable things, and I think very much forgotten and under the radar. How about first team in 10 years with 4+ sacks and 4 picks in a playoff game? They did it to Herbert. They made him look bad, okay? Josh Allen, earlier this year, 9 of 30, a pick, the worst game of his career. Goff, 5 interceptions, the worst game of his career. Tua, 3 picks. They scored just 12 points, the worst game of his career. Is that a coincidence or what?
Well, I think Cris and I were on the right side of that game. So, we think pretty highly of that. I did not kind of call out names, but there were some handicappers who couldn't believe how lucky Houston got in the game against the Chargers. And anything but the case. If you handicap that game correctly, you didn't underestimate the Houston pass defense. And that's why I said that don't ding Herbert for that performance. Right. Praise Houston for that performance.
Okay, I want to ask you a quick question on Herbert before we go on to the rest of this game. I've got a couple of Chargers fans, one specifically who I used to work with, who is killing Herbert. And he's been doing it for a few years. He says he's overrated. He's not good. He is not clutch. I don't want him in any game that matters. Just give me a quick summation of your thoughts on all of those comments. And this guy says Herbert will never be a winner in this league.
I say don't do that. Wait till Harbaugh builds his team in his image. one great draft was not enough. Don't do that to Herbert. He was above average this year.
Yeah, we had 3 picks the whole regular season, and then he had 16 the last game. But it's one game. Yeah. It's one game. All right, let's hear from Kansas City head coach Andy Reid on the defense.
The first thing that jumps out at you is speed. That front can run. We didn't have a chance to play against Zero last year, or last time we played him a couple weeks back. And he's fast also as a linebacker, and he's kind of their main play caller there. So, but he can, the speed of the D-line, the linebackers just jump out at you. And they're real good. The hands of the secondary, those guys, they catch the ball. You don't see a lot of bobbles or drops or that. If you're presenting it close, they can go up and snag it.
Okay, so that's Coach Reid talking about the Texans defense, which going to be interesting against the Chiefs O-line. How do you think that matchup looks, Ron?
The Chiefs O-line?
Against
the Chiefs O-line, it's fine other than the right tackle because Taylor goes offside. He doesn't even line up at the line of scrimmage and gets away with it. I have a problem with that particular lineup and that him not getting called for a penalty almost every play. But yeah, Houston's going to try to put pressure on Mahomes. I mean, Houston's path to victory or covering in this game is to frustrate Mahomes.
Is this the kind of game, though, where first half, first quarter, the road team, maybe a little bit of value there off the rush factor, the layoff factor? Any thoughts, guys, while you're sleeping, doing a show too?
What's happening?
Nothing. I don't know. I'm not sure. But anyway, I'm asking about the first half or first quarter lines against Kansas City. Hello.
I don't know. Can Cris hear you?
Yeah, I can. I'm just he faded out on. I didn't hear it. He tailed off the first time. The first quarter line is Kansas City 2.5 to 3.
Okay. How about first half?
First half is 6, 5.5 or 6.
Now, when's the last time that the Chiefs led by 6 or more at halftime? I don't know. I'm just asking. I don't know.
A handful of games ago, they did have a decent game against somebody.
That's what I'm saying.
But it's not too common.
Coming in with a stout defense, why can't it be at least close in the first half? I'm just saying, I got to take Houston in the first half, and then whatever happens, happens. Thoughts, Ron?
I don't really have any thoughts on that particular game. +6? Yeah, I do not normally bet first half kinds of stuff. Occasionally, I might bet a first half under if I have a feel that the teams are trying to figure each other out. We've talked about that in the past. And week 18 is a big week for quarter and a half plays, but not in this game.
Overall thoughts on the spreads? What is it, 8.5, 41.5?
It is.
Or 9?
It's kind of strange. I was going through some accounts when we opened the show, and I'm seeing some strange line movement at lesser known but sharp books. Okay. And I can, because I ran into Detroit down to 8.5 flat. But overtly they look like they're 9, 9.5, 10. So 8.5s, you don't see too many. And then the Kansas City, that was higher yesterday. Now we're seeing more flat 8s.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. So you're not doing anything, Ron, straight up in this game.
Well, I'm going to answer your question with a question, and I know Cris didn't get a chance to read my email.
Okay.
But my biggest problem, I focus on power ratings, and while I don't do models like Cris and others, I am modeling in a way because I'm doing matchup analysis. That's a very big part of my performance. And that's kind of like modeling. And my question to Cris, or to anybody who does models or even power ratings, is that models take into account data that's already in what they've achieved during the year and so on. And so do matchup analysis. But you have a situation with Kansas City where I think models and power ratings can't be used perfectly because they have two wide receivers and a running back that have barely played together, that are clearly better than what the first 15 games showed before Brown played with KC, before Pacheco was even healthy. How do you do that? Do you have to go subjective, or can you model it by putting more input into those players that are going to play more snaps than they did during the regular season, Cris?
I think people balloon up priors and kind of try to factor in priors and try to mix and match in that sort of a fashion. I mean, I'm not going to do that. I mean, there's no, how many times do we see a team that all of a sudden adds players or gets healthy, and the group isn't used to playing with each other and they don't really perform up to standards? But sometimes they do really well. I mean, it's not a guarantee by any case that Kansas City's going to all of a sudden be an offensive juggernaut now that they've got, a full contingent of offensive players ready to go. So sometimes it's just, you have to, by repetition and gameplay, get used to each other. I mean, I know it's not basketball. We especially see them in basketball. Every time you put together, great basketball teams, they can't play with each other for a while.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating discussion topic. Maybe we'll do this based on what we see on Kansas City on Tuesday. But it is a subjective thing as to if you're going to say they're better, how much better. And the chemistry issue, I agree, it doesn't automatically mean that they're going to be better. Models don't like subjectivity, at least not the models that I hear people talk about. And power ratings sometimes do not allow for subjectivity too. You have to take into account situational factors. My power ratings obviously are one aspect of my handicapping, but when one team is in their third road game and another team is off a bye and they're staying at home, obviously the power ratings aren't figuring that into. So this is a 23-day bye and a chance to get acclimated for the wide receivers. And it's just a question, what do you do? Cris has heard me talk about, I've bumped up Kansas City's power rating by 1 point because of all these changes and stuff like that. It's not enough to make this a power rating play or anything like that. But I think it's going to be fascinating to see what Hopkins, what Brown, what Pacheco bring to the table in this game.
Okay, well, since I can't relate to anything models, because I'll never be a model, let's go to the next game. Saturday, second game of the doubleheader. Washington at Detroit. Motown is buzzing big time. They're buzzing in Vegas, too. Cris cannot believe he's in this situation with the double-digit favorite at home, getting ready to go to the championship game. Your thoughts on Washington's 30th in run D against the Detroit rush game?
I think I picked up some new info this morning, which was kind of nice, which makes a lot of sense, is Detroit really isn't unable to practice against mobile quarterbacks. So a lot of teams, have some sort of mobility in their practice squad or something, and Detroit doesn't get the benefit of that. And
you can put Jared Goff in a wheelchair and move him around. He's pretty
mobile. He'd be more mobile. So, the fact that more than likely, obviously, Detroit has to look at mobile quarterbacks going forward. So the fact that they face Daniels out of the gate, that's going to benefit them. So that's one feather in the cap for the Lions. If they can get by Washington, that they get some experience, because then they're going to face Hurts probably, and they're going to probably face Mahomes or Allen or Jackson. So it's mobile quarterbacks from here on, and they have their problems. So,
yeah. Well, anybody who's watched this show over the last several weeks or months knows how much I just think Jaden Daniels is phenomenal, and as a rookie specifically. So I'm going to focus on him from the sound early in this game. He's won, 4 straight games with a fourth quarter or overtime drive. You don't see kids doing that very often. But Herm Edwards, who I spoke to, I guess it was 4 years. I think it was 4 years ago at the Pac-12 Media Day when he was Arizona State's head coach, and his quarterback was Jaden Daniels, who I briefly met at the Media Day. He was raving about him as a quarterback, as a person. And I just happened to turn on ESPN the other day, and there they were talking about Jaden Daniels. So I recorded it so people could hear what Herm says. Go ahead.
He's very composed in big moments. I witnessed it on the sideline when I was coaching him when he was a young freshman, sophomore. Just
tell us about the Michigan State.
Yeah, we have the final drive. Mm-hmm. I called him over there, and there might be 10 Arizona State fans in the whole stadium, and it's white and green, and they're screaming. And I called him 5. I said, 5, you good? He looks at me and says, Coach, we're good. I said, go win the game. He wins the game, goes on the final drive and wins the game on the road. And it was like, this is what he does. And I've watched it with my own eyes. It's not surprising what he's doing right now in Washington. Not at all. And I think if you're a Washington Commander fan, you realize you have a special young man here. And he's about the team. He's not about his own numbers and things. I do know this, and I don't know if he knows this, but there's never been a rookie quarterback to win a Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. History of the league. Mm-hmm. And I guarantee you, if he's listening to this program, he just heard what I said. Mm-hmm. He might already know that. Mm-hmm. And he's probably challenging himself. I want to be that guy.
There you go. That's Herm Edwards talking about his old quarterback, Jaden Daniels, who even Lions quarterback Jared Goff is totally impressed with. Let's hear from your QB there, Cris. We're going to go
extremely
one
impressive. Very, very impressive for anyone that young to do what he's doing. And doesn't look like he is a rookie. It doesn't look like he feels like a rookie. It feels like he understands the moment and is comfortable in it. And so our job on defense is try to make him comfortable. And it's been a challenge for a lot of teams this year, but I'm excited to see what they do.
What about their defense? Obviously, they got some worse up front.
Yeah, really good up front, really good at the second level. Bobby Wagner, Lou, who we've played, he's a hell of a player. On the back end, they're good, they're young, they're feisty. I think the whole team is young and hungry, and we're aware of that, and we got to come out and be ready to go.
There you go, Jared Goff, Mr. Excitement, giving us his thoughts on who he's facing here. And then there's the real Mr. Excitement, head coach Dan Campbell, talking about the task at hand and facing Daniels. Go, Coach.
He is dangerous. He's dangerous. He poses a major threat. He does not play the position like a rookie quarterback. He's composed. He understands how to progress. He sees the field well. He can buy time with his legs. He's a dangerous runner. He's smart. He's smart. You can tell he understands how to run that offense, what they're asking him to do. And then he's got weapons. He's got weapons around him. I mean, his receiver's pretty dang good. 17's a hell of a player, He's got a good back. He's got more than one receiver. Ertz at tight end. I mean, they've got weapons. The whole line plays hard. But he's a difference maker.
Now that you're so close and that you've accomplished so much, you guys have done so many things already to this point, is just getting to the Super Bowl, is that enough to define a successful season, or do you think you have to win it?
No, I mean, listen, everything's about this game right now. And like I've said it before, I've been to the Super Bowl and I've lost it and it stinks. So it's about this week. We got to find a way to win this game this week.
Is it hard to keep the players focused on that, knowing that you're just 2 games away, or do you think you drill that into them that it's just the next step?
Yeah, I think it's actually, I don't think that's hard at all. I think they understand what's at stake. I know they watched these games this weekend. They watched that game last night. This is and inevitably, I mean, I showed the team really every game, just different situations that popped up, a snapshot of what happened. And you just look at, what could have cost the team. And that's what the playoffs are, is, man, that one extra play, just doing your job in the heat of the moment. And And if you do that, you give yourself the best odds. If not, that the other team's going. And so we've got a really good opponent here. They got a dynamic quarterback. They're playing good offense, good defense, really good coaching, and we got a work cut out for us. That's what we've got. This is nothing new that we're in right now. This is nothing new for me, for the coaches, for the players. We're in the middle of the circus, man, and it's about time to perform. That's the world we're in.
There you go. That's Coach Campbell. And are you ready to run through a wall for him there, Cris?
Am I ready to what?
Run through a wall for your coach?
I like what he had to say because, I'll tell you one thing.
Yep.
What you did notice was a few of the teams that lost, they did some stupid things, especially Minnesota. Just horrible, dumb penalties at the wrong time and unsportsmanlike behavior, or just stuff you're not supposed to be doing that you're supposed to know better. And that really comes from coaching and making sure that the players can't even gravitate toward that type of stuff. So I feel like he kind of touched on that a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, he had one quote. He said, "one extra play." And for whatever reason, I fast forwarded to one of my favorite draft picks that the Lions had. I have a couple terrible draft picks they had, but one of the ones, a guy named Rodriguez, who wasn't supposed to ever play in the NFL, but he's always had this mentality in college, and why I liked him and why I gave him a good grade is that you can't get him off the field because he's just there. He makes plays, one extra play. And he had a fantastic rookie season. This past year, he's not even playing in this game. He's hurt. And I was just thinking that one extra play, that's what you need out of these teams. If they don't make that play, is it because they don't have someone like Rodriguez in the right situation? And that's true for any team.
Yeah, well, one extra play is going to be very nice for the running back of the Lions because he's thrilled to be back. David Montgomery talked first about the strong commitment in the room. They're not there to play games, baby, just to win.
I mean, I think when you play this game, every opportunity that you get, the stakes are always high. Just got a little bit of icing on the top now just because we playing for the big fish now. So we got some relentless guys in this locker room who take this personal and they take their job very serious. So everybody's locked in. You can see it, you can feel it, you can smell it. So it's like, I'm just happy to be a part of it, really.
David, what was your mindset when you did get some positive news and you thought that you could come back, especially with the trajectory that this team is on this season?
It was just like lock in, kind of like put the horse blinders on and silence the noise of the world and just kind of attack it every day, no matter what the day looks like. As long as I get an opportunity to wake up every day, no matter how the day before looked, I got a chance. So I kind of looked at it that way and put my best foot forward every chance that I got. And like I said, God put me here, so I'm here now.
Sorry. How does it feel?
Good, great. I mean, sure, I think it feels better than it did before I got hurt. So I'm good, yeah.
All that resting.
Yeah.
How much of that rehab was like physical action versus just getting rest?
A bunch of it, MCL sprain or whatever you want to call it. It's all about strengthening it, and the more you can get the scar tissue to grow back, the better off you be. And in order for the scar tissue to grow, you have to strengthen it. So we did a lot of stuff that was kind of focused towards regaining the strength, which calls for physical things to do. So yeah, pretty physical, pretty strenuous, but I needed it.
There you go. So that's running back David Montgomery of the Lions. I love his attitude, and I like a lot about David Montgomery. And I guess he's healthy. He says it feels better now than before the injury. I find that hard to believe, but hey, here's his chance to show it, baby.
Yeah, I'm surprised he was able to come back so fast. You kind of get paranoid that he's coming back a little early, but all indications is that he is 100% healthy. And
sounds like it.
Between Gibbs and Montgomery, it just seems like they should just run through Washington's defensive line like melted butter. it looks pretty good for them. And Gibbs needs the rest. You can't run that guy like a workhorse. He's not big enough. He's not going to be durable enough.
Before I get to my question for Cris on Detroit, I do want to spend a couple of seconds again on Washington, and that's with their quarterback Daniels. Yeah, we know he has an opportunity. On another show, Adam Chernoff did talk about mobile quarterbacks having some success against the Lions. But I think in this particular game, it can't just be Daniels. They have to have the threat of the other running backs, because if they allow the Lions' physical front four to just focus on Daniels, I think the Lions are going to be fine. So I think one aspect of this game for Washington has to be more than just Daniels in the run game. And then the other thing I would say, which I would probably disagree with something that was part of Chris's show yesterday, is that I don't think Brown as the wide receiver is the key wide receiver for Washington in this game. I know he can win deep, but in my opinion, wide receiver 2 for Washington is Zacharias. And he's going to be the one that I think is going to get more targets than Brown. And I'm curious to see what happens with him, because at Virginia, I believe it was Virginia, he was a pretty precise route runner. And you have to do that against Detroit, because Detroit's pass defense has clearly improved over the last half of the season. Cris could attest to that. So my 2 points on Washington are Daniels needs more help in the run game, and that look for a different wide receiver than maybe people think in the pass game.
I agree 100%. They're going to have to it's just not going to be the Daniels show. What I did also find interesting was how defenses have to actually have 2 different preparations with their game plan and how they're going to handle Daniels. And that is, what are they doing if he's in the pocket, and what are you doing if he's out of the pocket? And those are requiring basically a lot more preparation, because you're needing to change your focus. And what he's really good at is if you can get the defense to switch, he's really good at adapting immediately, because he knows that the defenses are going to move in such a direction that it's going to open up something over here. So he's got a seasoned veteran ability to be able to pick that up on the fly, and he's getting a lot of success doing it that way.
Well, the Austin Eckler I think is going to be involved in this game, and they'll be throwing the little short stuff to him, and let's see what the blocking like out in front of him. Brian Robinson has been doing a nice job. He's going to get you some yards here and there, but I think Eckler out of the backfield going to be something to watch.
I think that's a good point, and we saw glimpses of the old Eckler last week, and that's probably necessary. My last question on this game is, Cris, how would you like Dan Campbell to coach this game? I mean, there's going to be aggression, but how much aggression do you want from him? Because if it backfires at any moment, you give an underdog hope.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think you want to put yourself in a position of vulnerability in a unnecessary and needless high variance situation. So, if you really think about it, when you've got a team like the Lions and the firepower that they have, you couldn't blame them for wanting to put them away out of the gate. You know what I mean? Just put the pedal to the metal, that sort of thing. Right. But there's also, a perspective of, well, wait a minute. We don't want to put this team in a desperate situation. We don't want to speed up the tempo of this game. We don't want to speed up urgency. We want ball control. We don't want more variance and more possessions in Jaden Daniels' hands. We want it in our hands. So let's ball control it, chew up the clock. Let's get our points and just basically, in a slow type of a way. So, and that's actually the way I would prefer that we do it. I don't think you need to express dominance over the other team. I don't think you need to be doing crazy fourth down plays, or I don't think you need to be pulling stuff out of the playbook. Just go and have a meat and potatoes type victory.
Anybody looking at the overs at 55.5? Pretty high line there, huh?
Well, that speaks to what Cris was saying. Detroit would prefer not to have this game 55.5 and all these possessions. That's what I think. Detroit would just prefer to play smash mouth on the defensive line and get in, get out, get their points.
My concern also is that we anointed the Lions' defense as good again. They had that great game against Minnesota, and wait a minute, what did Minnesota do against the Rams? They did nothing. So how good of a victory was that over Minnesota if they all of a sudden self-imploded? So little bit of concern there that maybe the Detroit defense is a lot more vulnerable, and we need to pay more attention to it. And the security blanket of watching them perform well against the Vikings really isn't much of a security blanket.
That makes sense. All right, guys, ready to move on to Sunday's games?
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, Rams at the Eagles. Fascinating game there. 37 degrees, a chance of rain in that game. Rams going 3,000 miles is never a fun thing to do in the postseason specifically. After a 1-4 start, I think the Rams coaching staff has done as good a job as anybody in the league, led by, obviously, McVay. But their defense is unbelievable right now. It is so much better than, everybody was talking about the Chargers defense in L.A. all season long, and I kept saying their defense is not beating anybody. And every time they faced a good offensive team, they didn't do anything. And now the Rams have been doing stuff. And, they gave up a lot of points to Buffalo, but they still beat them. Chris Shula, a rookie defensive coordinator, 8th year with the Rams, but he's a rookie DC, and whatever buttons he's pushing have been phenomenal. Your thoughts on that with those kids on that side?
Kids is the key word there. The draft matters. That's basically what I'll say. Coaching, absolutely, I agree with you, Ted. But they drafted 4 guys in the last 2 years to try to replace one guy who's an all everything, Darnold. And those 4 guys have stepped up to the plate. And teams that draft well win games. And now they're not rookies anymore. This is their 19th game or 20th, whatever number of games that these guys play. So, and they got a tough task, but it's hopeful for the Rams, who, like you showed in your videos last week, we all got a sense of great confidence with the Rams in the locker room and how they were approaching the postseason. And now they have to do it a second week.
Yep. I love what Coach McVay said after the last game in the locker room. He says, we are built for this. Now, it could be just coach speak, but bottom line is they're playing like they're built for it. Let's hear from the coach, who talked about basically praising his young defense heading into Philly.
I think these guys are all about the right stuff. Kobe Turner's leadership up front. I think, Chris Shula, the defensive coaches, Giff Smith, A.C. Carter, Joe Caniglio, thought we had a great rush plan. And I thought ultimately it's always about the players bringing it to life and having a real understanding of what we were trying to get done, what was the intent. They have really played excellent football as of late. They're peaking at the right time. They're not showing any of that youth that you would think, as you play your 18th game in in this season. But I'm proud of them. They came through in a big way, and they were instrumental in us being able to advance.
Emotion doesn't show up in a box score. How do you describe what this team did to channel that emotion
I think you can feel it more than anything I could say. There was just, they had a look in their eye. They had a focus, the right kind of urgency and enjoyment that we always try to strike that perfect balance, Kirk. And I was just proud of them. And I think you could just feel it. You could feel it in warm-ups. There was just an aura. There was, once we got to Arizona, and I thought we did a great job really on our Friday practice when it was still at, I want to say Kalu, Woodland Hills. But once we got here, I think that offered, just a chance to kind of exhale Now let's lock in. Let's all be in the same place. Let's have 2 really good days of preparation, and then let's peak at the right time. And our guys certainly did that. It seems like we've been here for a while. It seems like we were waiting on this game for a long time, and this Philly game will come really quickly.
Based on what you've seen this season and this week, how do you expect your team to respond to the challenge of a short week in a big match?
I expect them to respond the right way, Omar. I expect them to be ready to go. The first thing is let's put together a good plan in terms of how we want to make sure that we turn over. We're ready to go. It's going to be a cross-country trip for us. But, we've been in a similar scenario and situation now. We didn't have to travel back home when we ended up playing Arizona on Monday night in the 21 season, and then we flew out to Tampa to play them on Sunday at 2 o'clock, which is when I believe that we're kicking off. So I expect them to respond the right way. That's all they've shown me.
There you go. So that's Coach McVay, who, by the way, small thing, but not to me, because what I do, Coach responds to questions by calling you by your first name.
I took a note of that.
Oh, yeah. He's been doing that forever. I love that about him. A couple of hockey coaches do that regularly, which is a great thing. All right, Saquon, can you get 300 yards against this team this week? Is this a different ballgame?
Ted, where can I get that shirt?
Oh, you just saw it? I've been wearing it the
Yeah.
whole time. You go to Mary Young, the Rusty Young's widow. She
okay.
Yeah, she buy it online. Anyway, does Saquon get close to 300 yards this week, or was that just a once in a lifetime game when we had him on our show several weeks ago?
Well, he's loving the fact that his team is deeper in the playoffs than his New York Giant team was.
Well,
so
that's an understatement.
So he's all systems go.
Yeah.
We're supposed to have some weather there.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the weather that I have is, 37 degrees and a chance of rain, as I said earlier. So
I thought that by the fourth quarter we might see a little bit of snow. Not
really,
heavy.
I didn't see that at all. Okay. So is the Rams defense, did they learn from the last time they faced these guys? 255 rushing yards for Saquon, 37-20 Philadelphia win. Is that just old news and it was just one of those games? By the way, Eagles have won 8 straight at home.
I think the flip side that I'm going to focus on, be interesting to hear what your guys' thoughts are on, is that what do we do with Philly's first playoff game? Because I'm tempted to throw it out. I throw it out because Hurts was rusty. It was obviously rusty. In a way, Green Bay should have won the game. Chris and I talked about that a couple of days ago and stuff.
Both teams played poorly, I think.
Green Bay ran out of people. That's all.
Well, yeah, but that was part of the reason, but they didn't play well.
I don't want to discount the fact that Philly has an excellent defense and completely improved in the secondary. And, their job is that there are some tough players in this game. Puka is a very tough player to guard, and Philly is a pretty physical team in their own right. So the bottom line for me is, how much of Philly's last week's game do you want to discount, number one? And then number two, can Philadelphia win versus the Ram offensive line? Because Stafford has looked pretty damn good the last 6 to 8 weeks with no turnover-worthy plays last week.
The one thing I take from last week's Philly game is I think they destroyed the Packers in the trenches. Absolutely destroyed them. And I think if they're able to do, I don't think they're going to destroy the Rams, but if they keep that up, and obviously it's good to have Hurts come back, with a one game under his belt and he can get back into the rhythm again. We'll see. But, to me, it's still always about Saquon. I mean, he's the guy.
Well, I ask you, Ron, I'm giving him a free pass. Am I wrong? It just feels like they had their flat game. I believe they're supposed to be good enough to recognize that and come prepared this week and play much better. Hurts has that first game off the concussion protocol game behind him. I'm giving them a free pass. Do you think I'm wrong for doing that?
No, I don't. And I think I just needed to verbalize it out loud. I think there are a lot of handicappers out, and this doesn't mean the Rams can't win and cover. because the Rams are well coached and all that other stuff. They have the coaching edge and so on and so forth. But aside from that, whether they win or cover or not, I do think that Philadelphia shouldn't be judged on one game. And I think handicappers can overreact to one game. And what Philly put on tape from last game isn't the kind of thing that threatens to get to the Super Bowl. But all teams go through that. I mean, you can remember a billion years ago when Kenny Stabler rallied the Raiders past New England down 2 scores, and they barely won the game. And then eventually the monkey was off the back, and then they won against Minnesota in Super Bowl. Every NCAA basketball team in March Madness goes through one game where they get a layup and they win by 1 point, and then they steamroll the rest of the way. So I agree with you, Cris.
I don't think anybody's concerned about Philadelphia. I think most people are giving Philadelphia the free pass.
You know where I'm concerned? Them getting out coached in this game. I'm concerned about that if I'm the Eagles. I don't trust Sirianni. To me, Saquon has made him look like a genius. They have the best O-line in the game. They have the most improved defense in the league. Okay, by far. They went from worst to first in defense. And I don't think it's Sirianni. I think Fangio is the difference there. So I think they can be outcoached in this game, and we'll see if it's in that situation. Nakobe Dean is out. That doesn't help their the linebackers. Yeah. So we'll see. Okay, Coach S, prove me wrong.
One more comment I want to make on this, which you guys can comment on, is that one thing Green Bay did well, and I think Green Bay did a lot of things well last week, is that they took A.J. Brown out of the game. And I don't think you can get by in this game without A.J. Brown. So I think this is an important game to make sure that he's on the field doing what he needs to do, a little bit less book reading.
I don't think A.J. Brown's healthy. I don't think he's healthy.
I think he's very healthy because if you look real closely, he was reading my book on the sideline, which I was very.
So he's definitely not healthy.
I didn't say he was smart. I said he was. Anyway, bottom line with the lines, guys. What are you doing in this game? Is it 6:44 right now, basically?
Yep.
Okay. So what are we looking at?
I'm watching it. I can make a case for both teams. I think Philly can take care of business, but I just don't want to lay the points. I think there's enough diversity in the Rams, and the A.J. Brown thing is really the deciding factor. If I know he can get loose for 1 or 2 big plays, I'd probably lean Philly.
Are you both looking at this as the correct line, by the way? What did you make it?
I think I would have made it a tad higher.
I think it's low, but
so if it's a touchdown, do you guys just take the Rams because of value? Or no, it wouldn't be much value because you expect it to be 6.5 or 7, right?
Right.
Okay, gotcha.
I have no right to comment on the Rams. I've been wrong about them for weeks in a row. So,
and Tyler Higbee is expected to play with a chest injury that had him, I guess, coughing up blood or something. That's a nauseating thought. Anyway, so let's go to the last game on Sunday and the game of the year, I guess, right? So far, Baltimore at Buffalo, 2 co-MVP quarterbacks going at it in this game. 9 degrees the last I saw, maybe some snow, just the way we love it, boys.
Yeah, well, Buffalo gave an incredibly inspired effort last week. The biggest emotional effort that I'd seen from them all year, and the biggest effort of any team last week. And it was just one of those things where Denver was not going to compete in that game. And I think that was a surprise to me, but it was a surprise to me as to how focused they were. The question is, can you drum that up every single week? This is a heated rivalry that doesn't, I mean, even though they don't play each other much, you got the 2 top MVP candidates going against each other. Josh Allen, incredibly careful this year. Lamar Jackson, Todd Monken's second year as offensive coordinator, and how they've thrived in that system. I don't know the latest on Jay Flowers, but it's a fascinating match.
I haven't heard anything.
He's not practicing again. I don't think he's playing, is he?
Yeah,
I have a feeling he's not, and if he does, how healthy?
Yeah, exactly. Look, we talked about it for weeks and weeks. The Buffalo defense stinks, and the last few weeks they have figured out a way to make it just extremely competitive and much more than I think any of us expected. I'm not going to speak for you. You speak for you.
Me speak for me?
Yeah, speak for yourself.
Well, I mean, we're looking at Baltimore that's had the number 1 defense since week 12. So
I'm talking about the Buffalo D.
No, I know.
Okay, and they gave up 271 yards to 81 in the last time they played this team. I was at the Buffalo Rams game. We talked about that afterwards, how they just let the Rams go up and down the field. They are just so much better the last few weeks. Is it just a coincidence? I mean, are they playing hard? They didn't draft new guys.
Well, I think I won't speak for Cris, but yeah, you can't take too much from the last Buffalo-Baltimore meeting because the very first play was a 87-yard Derrick Henry run. What are you going to do? They got behind the chains and so on. The biggest question with Buffalo's D in this game, to me, is what are you going to do against Derrick Henry? Because he punishes other people when he runs, not the other way around. What do you think Buffalo's game plan? What would you make Buffalo's game plan against Derrick Henry?
Okay, wait a minute. Before we even talk anymore, once again, Ron, you've done a beautiful job of setting up our only sound in this game. Head coach Sean McDermott on dealing with the Ravens' rush attack. Go, coach.
The run game specifically, a tremendous job. I mean, they move people off the line of scrimmage. They out-scheme people. I think Coach Monken is one of the best out there and what they do in their offense and the run game in particular. And then you've got to be able to tackle Derrick Henry. So they do a really good job.
Their defense, you guys have run the ball so well all year, but how much of a concern is their size up front? This is probably one of the biggest defensive lines you're going to face.
Yeah, no, it is, Sal. And they present a lot of challenges to an offensive line in this case. Being able to run the football. They're really big inside, like you mentioned, and they put the roster together. I'm sure with that in mind.
Sean, previous to September, your teams had a pretty good amount of success limiting Derrick Henry. Is there anything you could take from those experiences where your defense was effective against him and apply to this week?
I'd say it's small, really. The scheme is different, right? They present a lot of different challenges, obviously, with their passing game, but also with Lamar and the combination of Lamar and Derrick. So we have a tremendous amount of respect for both of those players, and they're hard to stop. It was a good acquisition on their part, and just that two-dimensional type of weaponry, if you will, is tough on people.
And obviously, Sean, they're so different with their body and how they move around. How important is just the fundamentals of tackling, because you have two totally different guys carrying the ball this week?
No, it is. It's big. Tackling is big every week, for sure. This week, to your point, and you add Hill to that equation in terms of the backfield weaponry and just what they're able to do in space and power, and like I said, very talented team.
There you go. So good luck, coach. Maybe he needs to go out and tackle a few guys as well. That's such a huge part of this. Facing this rushing team, how do you tackle those guys? Because the way they scheme, they're all over the damn place.
My takeaway from that interview is I've never heard McDermott so beautifully lay out and answer those questions.
That's why I played it for you.
I think that was fascinating that he hit all the points that he needed to hit in that. And it's just amazing. I mean, I enjoyed that interview.
Yeah, me too, a lot. As soon as I heard it, I said, that's it. We got to use that baby. Because he covered exactly what we were going to talk about. But Ravens pass D against Josh Allen. Thoughts there?
Don't know if Cris wants to attack that one first.
Go ahead, Ron. I'm chasing down some info here.
Okay. Ravens pass D. Well, the thing is, if Josh Allen continues to be that careful with the ball, it's not just the pass D against Josh Allen. It's involving Cook into the scheme, and Cook has just gotten better and better and better as a running back, and he presents probably a 4.5 to 5 yards per carry possibility, even against this Baltimore D. You've got to shut down Cook, and then you can answer your question about Josh Allen versus the D, because if you don't shut down Cook, what I don't like about this Baltimore D is how they let teams back into the game in the third quarter. And you're going to see 20, 25-yard passes to Shakur and to somebody else and so on if they don't contain the run game and make Buffalo one-dimensional. And that is a legit worry for Baltimore's defense.
Are you a little worried, too, that if it's a really close game, there might be some out-coaching done in the fourth quarter, Mr. Harbaugh?
They got Derrick Henry for a reason.
Yep.
And I call him the closer. And you either use him or you don't. And if you use him by the fourth quarter, you're supposed to wear down the other team. And I think it was Derbify who mentioned Matt Milano in the chat. And yeah, Matt Milano is one of those guys who's in the right place at the right time. You saw the drop off last year when he missed a bunch of games.
Absolutely.
And that's what you have to do. You can't just get Derrick Henry down by the side. You have to be in the right place, right stance at the right time.
Okay, you mentioned Cook, and I think he is such a key because if they can control some of the clock, it doesn't matter what Derrick Henry is. He can't beat you on the sidelines. Keep that offense off the field as much as possible. That's what I would try to focus on.
The other helpful thing for the Buffalo defense, especially if Zay Flowers isn't there, or even if he's there at less than 100%, this is not a situation where if Lamar stretches the field, it's probably because of a broken play, not because necessarily design. This is a tight end centric attack. And I think you're going to see a lot of Andrews. Maybe he stretches the seam because Andrews has that. We've seen highlight reel catches the last 2-3 weeks out of Andrews, and likely is really their best downfield threat. And he's a tight end too. It's really the tight ends, not the wide receivers, that are going to do damage. Wide receivers caught one pass last week for Baltimore.
Did you guys make the line what it is at 1, or is it still 1?
I made it pick 'em.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Buffalo might become the favorite by the time the game goes.
But it's Baltimore 1 now, right?
Yep.
Most places? Okay. So because you think that movement is there, is it even value to you to just take 1 point, or does that not mean anything?
I think for Cris it means teases.
You get over 7, baby.
Because you could take 1 over 7 and you can't pick 'em over 7.
Yeah, I've got to. I'll be monitoring closely because I want to have some Buffalo teasers, and I want some Baltimore teasers also.
Yeah, and of course, if it's 35-10, we don't even want to think about that again, right?
This is a case where Buffalo has pretty much. They are playoff tested, and Buffalo has played Kansas City tough. They just play tough. You see a lot of close games out of Buffalo in the playoffs when they're playing teams of their caliber. They could blow out the other teams, but when they're playing teams of their caliber, you see a lot of close games. And, on paper, Baltimore is the better team, in my opinion. They've earned their number 1, postseason power rating right here. But the game's not played on paper, and I respect what Buffalo can be doing in this game. And I think it's a fascinating chess match, and we'll see what happens.
I think Buffalo has the best intangibles going into the weekend. The Josh Allen factor, where he wills teams to win.
Yeah, but I also see this as a situation where the star players can actually piss away their games. Right? This is like a matchup of quarterbacks that have a history of pissing away games. So they also have a history of winning games too, but it's It
In
just
the
seems
playoffs too, right? Specifically.
I don't think you can trust either one of these quarterbacks as much as you obviously other quarterbacks.
That's so funny. You got two MVP strong, heavy favorite candidates, and you can't trust either of them. What does that say?
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I agree with that. And the fascinating thing is they don't have to do it on their own. Allen has Cook. He has Kincaid, who I think will be a bigger factor in this game because he didn't have to be a bigger factor in the Denver game because it got away from Denver.
Right.
They have Dawson Knox also. They have Shakur. I mean, Allen has a bunch of targets and he has veteran experience that he can go to a second or a third read. And Lamar Jackson, who's more comfortable now in the Todd Monken offense, has two tight ends and a running back and Justice Hill, as mentioned, in the passing game. Unfortunately for him, he doesn't have the same trust in the wide receivers.
Right.
Bateman occasionally, Nelson Aguilar, sporadically every once in a while, usually one big 20-yard gain and stuff like that. But these guys do have people that they can rely upon. They don't have to do it all themselves.
Let me ask you something. I want to interested in what you guys think, because obviously Josh Allen's game changed this year. They wanted to put him in a position of not having to run the ball as much, not allowing himself to be exposed, and he's done a darn good job of doing that this year. It's the playoffs, though.
He'll run whenever he needs to run.
Do we see him revert back to a little bit of the old Josh Allen, and we start to see him run more? Or,
if he needs to, he will. I mean, it's the playoffs. He's not going to be holding back anywhere. If he sees something, he's going to go for it. Not even a thought. But it depends what the situation. But he's
I have two answers to that. One, I think the threat of him running works to his advantage, where he could do that, stop, and hit a wide receiver. That's what I would do. And the second answer to that question, on third down, anything goes. He'll run as hard as whatever. On third downs, absolutely.
Any thoughts on the totals in this game? 51.5-ish?
That seems high to me.
If weather was better, you could tell me what the winds are. This game kind of gets out of hand. You could look for, if you get a low second half total, I would invest, in the winner take all second half kind of thing, especially since Baltimore, if they have a lead, you can't trust them in the third quarter with a lead. I guess the only thing I would look for, if the weather is decent and the circumstances of score and everything is right, second half over.
Okay. I didn't see any wind issues yesterday. I don't know if that's changed at all, but I don't think that's supposed to be a factor, which it can be. Could be swirling in that place,
Wouldn't be shocked. Wouldn't be shocked with overtime.
Yeah.
I mean, on paper, Baltimore is a better team, but what does that mean?
Call me after the game. You'll tell me what it means. Immediately afterwards. I got nothing else, guys, on this weekend. I'm really looking forward to it. I just want to say I was awakened earlier this morning, way too early, with a phone call talking about the death of 90-year-old Bob Uecker.
Yeah.
He is a classic guy. I posted a personal story about him online on my Facebook page if anybody wants to check it out. But, hey, that guy lived a full 90 years, baby. We should all be so lucky.
Sad to see him go. What a great guy.
He's just a super guy. Anyway, just thought I'd throw that in.
Have fun this weekend. My advice on every show that I'm a part of is just because it's the playoffs, don't overdo it. Don't ruin a good season if you've had a good season by thinking I have to bet this game.
I'll agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I hope everybody has a successful and fun week.
Have fun, boys. Thanks.